Is Fortnite dying? That is the question we're going to be taking a look at today. Maybe it's not dying. Maybe it's all made up in our head, and in fact, Fortnite is very, very healthy. We're going to be taking a look at all the best things and worst things that have happened to Fortnite Battle Royale since its release all the way back in September 2017, using data online directly from Google to work out what is going on, the future of Fortnite, and if it really is on a downhill slope, and maybe it will never return to the peak that it once was. We'll be taking a look at how the sword, the recent mech addition, and lots of controversial changes in the past have affected Fortnite, and whether or not the mech, which everyone wants voted, I do as well by the way, as I'm sure most of you do, has really affected Fortnite as negatively as people think. Stick around to the end to see how Fortnite is currently and how it's being received around the world, and also comparing it to a few other super popular games like Minecraft to see how they currently compare. If you're new around here, make sure you're subscribing, and if there's two things you can do in this video. Number one, head down to the comment section, let me know down below which was your favorite Fortnite season. We'll be taking a look at all of them in this video. My favorite season personally is season 4, and hit that thumbs up button within the next 10 seconds to let me know that you've ever played Fortnite Battle Royale. That's right, you ever played Fortnite? Hit that like button. Without further ado, let's jump into it and see if Fortnite really is dying. Now, the data that we're taking from Google is taken from Google Trends, which takes the search term Fortnite in itself and sees how much the whole of the world is looking at, searching for, and taking in Fortnite content. With a time range all the way from the beginning of Fortnite Battle Royale's release up until the current day, we have got spikes, we have got troughs, and we've got loads of data to look at as to how people are actually receiving Fortnite, not just from tweets, not just from YouTube videos, everywhere on the internet. With the release of Fortnite Battle Royale in September 2017, there was pretty much no interest. People weren't really sure even what it was, but with its instant release, it definitely saw some traction. When Fortnite really started to hit its stride around the middle of Season 3, that's when things were really booming. The success of Season 3 continued all the way into my favorite season, Season 4, with the Carbide skin, with the Omega skin. I love the map changes, and personally, I love the skins. And it also tied in with the release of Playgrounds mode as well towards the end of Season 4, which ultimately meant that Fortnite had so many things that other games didn't. A Battle Royale mode, a zombie mode in Save the World, and also a place where you can go and mess around and do whatever you want. The creativity levels were through the roof. In fact, with the data that we've got here from Google, this is the point in which Fortnite was at its strongest. The most searched, the most played. Fortnite was just doing insane, and at this point, it was hard to maintain, but Fortnite kept on releasing seasons, and in fact, people kept on playing, obviously. Now, as Season 5 progressed, we started to see a little bit of a drop-off, actually, in player interest, but luckily that was revived very heavily with the start of Season 6. Throughout this data, you'll always see that the start of a season sees a massive resurgence in interest in Fortnite, but then we often see drops afterwards, and that's exactly what we saw. As with the start of Season 6, there was a little bit of a drop-off, and then towards the end, a massive drop-off, leading into the end of 2018. In December 2018, we saw the release of Season 7, and as we know, the release of the sword came shortly afterwards. Many people consider the sword to be ridiculously overpowered. At the time, there was uproar about it, and it was almost instantly vaulted. The interesting thing is, however, if we look at the data on the screen here, around the December point, although there was a big peak around the beginning of the season, there actually wasn't a huge drop-off at all around the period in which the sword was added. If anything, the interest just went straight back up, and Fortnite has been talked about, discussed, and played even more than ever. Now, thankfully, this is partly down to the fact that the sword was removed really, really quickly. Perhaps if the sword was in the game for longer, the damage and the interest would have actually dropped off rather than just staying up in a very high point. And we've definitely got Fortnite's fast reactions to that one to thank for. However, as we know with the mechs, which we'll get onto shortly, that isn't always the case. Now, towards the end of Season 7, we got a very big update with the ability to have redeploy re-added into the game, this time as an item. And overall, it just saw, again, a boom in people playing Fortnite. Again, it was a very well-received item. And as a result, the number of people playing, searching, and interacting with Fortnite went straight back up again. definitely a positive update. Then less than a month later, the Siphon, so that's mats and health upon elimination in public games, was added in, and again, all it did was maintain that excitement for Fortnite, keeping it up there, keeping it played. The Season 7 drew to an end, Season 8 started, and as soon as Season 8 kicked off, there was that hype, but then it really started to drop off. As a matter of fact, after the start of Season 8, Fortnite, at least in its internet presence, was at one of its lowest points it had been at, and it continued to drop off for the very first few weeks of Season 8, and then something, in my opinion, terrible happened, and I think a lot of people consider it terrible, which was the removing of the Siphon effects almost as soon as they'd just been added in public mode, meaning that no health, no materials upon eliminations was available unless you were in the arena mode, which was actually added at the exact same time in response to people saying that Fortnite was getting too hard, the skill gap was too big, and the really good players were just crushing all the really bad players in public lobbies. Around this time, that was a really talked about issue. I remember a lot of YouTubers really struggling with Fortnite at that point, and as a result, Fortnite decided to split its player base between the arena modes where competitive people could hang out and public modes where slightly newer players could try and go for their first victory royale. But despite everyone saying that the Siphon removed was one of the worst things that ever happened, and I still do agree that it was, the actual info from Google Trends here actually sees a resurgence and a slight upwards trend in players, in number of people searching and interacting with Fortnite, which is not necessarily what people thought. You can see Fortnite's official statement on screen here, but ultimately Siphon in public modes was helping that top 10% skill players and actually making the rest of players frustrated and upset as they were just getting absolutely run through people with a load of mats and a load of health. As a result, they're trying to cater to the newer players, to the players that are starting to play, and stop them just leaving Fortnite as soon as they've started to pick it up. Now, this is a really important part to the whole of the Fortnite storyline, and especially important from Fortnite and Epic Games' development side of the game. As Fortnite grows, new players obviously start playing, but the good players only get better and better. And as the game has been out for longer, the better players are far more separated from those new players, and keeping those new players in the game and not just playing one or two and realizing how good everyone is and then never coming back is really important, and will also link into the mechs that we'll talk about in a bit as well. As Season 8 continued, it didn't have the usual trend of dipping off at the end, believe it or not. It actually only increased, and with the start of Season 9, we definitely saw a lot of interest recovered again in Fortnite. Not as much as usual, but it was certainly big, and then it all started to happen again. In Season 9, everything starts to dip off and gradually slows down as we lead up to the start of Season X, which actually saw more interest, more hype than the previous Season 9, and almost matched the previous Season 7's and 8's releases as well. The start of Season X was set up to be one of the greatest seasons that we've had, at least for a long time. However, as we know, there were the mechs, which everyone hates and everyone wants removed, but they're there for a reason, and Fortnite have come out with a statement and explained why. In an article called Fortnite and the Brute, this is a direct reply by Fortnite to the community, letting them know why the Brute is still in the game and pretty much unchanged. According to Fortnite statistics, on average, the Brute will only get a few kills in each game, meaning that they're not taking up on the majority of kills, they're not completely destroying everyone, but they're still in the game. To summarize the article, mechs are literally there to allow to bridge that gap between brand new players entering a game and getting completely destroyed, and the really good players that are also in public games. The mechs allows people to jump in, get a few eliminations, feel like they can actually play Fortnite, but is ultimately hated by the better players. It's worth knowing as well that throughout all of the games that I've played, the vocal majority of gamers in a community are normally the smallest. They're normally the hardcore ones, the ones that play the most, and although our opinion does matter, is actually technically outweighed by all of the other casual players that are playing the game that aren't necessarily voicing an opinion online and are just sitting there playing it casually on their sofa each day. But what do the stats say? Is the mech really killing Fortnite, or is it keeping those players playing, the 90% of casual players that don't necessarily voice their opinion? Well, if we take a look at the graph after the successful start of Season X, we see the biggest decline ever in Fortnite. In fact, according to this data with a rating of 39 out of 100, we can actually see that this number has only ever been seen previously. We've got to go all the way back to around February 2018, and that puts us at a point where we're around about Season 2, just before everything blew up. This is literally the lowest point Fortnite has ever been at, and the mechs from the data are definitely not helping. Now, I said I compare against other popular games. Minecraft is obviously hugely popular at the moment, and in the data, this actually shows. Even with the start of Season X, when they both came a little bit closer together, they're now more separated than ever. With the red line being Minecraft and the blue line being Fortnite, other games are starting to see a massive resurgence as the player base that is huge for Fortnite is starting to divide, starting to split up, and many things are happening that isn't necessarily causing the death of Fortnite, but is definitely causing the slowing down. Now, before we all freak out, although Fortnite is on a downwards trend at the moment, that is typical of the post-release of a season. We know from the previous seasons that everything drops down a little bit. People aren't quite as interested, but it doesn't mean that with a few good updates, a few good changes, and even a better Season 11, things will go right back up again. Things are really in limbo, but what's important is what Fortnite does next to really see if it goes back up or keeps on going down. Now, comparing Fortnite's stat with itself is a little unfair, because if you compare it against other huge AAA gaming titles like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Overwatch, you start to realize just how huge and dominant Fortnite really is compared to everything else, and although it is on the decline, it is still one of the biggest games in the world by a long, long way, even though it's on a downfall. Now, I am a numbers person, so I've loved looking at all of these details, and here are my takeaways from everything I've seen. Number one, people are just sick of Fortnite. It's been out for 2 years now. They've probably played enough of it. Maybe one of their friends starts to move on, so the rest of them start to move on. Number two, the skill gap. As players get better and better and better, the amount of time you've got to invest in to stick with those guys and be just as good as building, editing, and shooting takes even more time, and as a result, it becomes less of a game that you just jump on and play for fun, and more of a game that you've got to invest all your time and effort into, which people don't have a lot of, to stay at the top of your game. But the most important people, who are they? They're you. I want you all to leave a comment down below letting me know if you're still playing Fortnite, if you're playing less Fortnite, or if you completely stopped playing Fortnite, because you are ultimately the data that we're looking at right now, but you've got a voice, you've got an opinion, and you can actually let us know what you're thinking and what you're actually doing. And with trends like this, I think you could be seeing me playing a little bit more Minecraft on the channel. You never know, very soon, having not played it for years and years. I hope you found this video useful. If you want to share it with your friends, please do, to let them know the whole story and history of Fortnite so far and whether or not it really is dying. If you are new around here, make sure you subscribe. You can check out another video on screen here as well. I hope you've given it a like if you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you with more videos here on the channel very soon.